Right on. Welcome back to the show. This time I got Oliver Switzer. Oliver, thanks. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm psyched to have you here. So you have some degree of helium fame for having kind of rewritten or helped a bunch of people figure out how to do their off-grid routers. Is that a lot of us were using the RUT240s? That started being a problem, and then you kind of dove in and figured out how to fix it. Before we get there, can I get a little background? Like, how did you know how to do that stuff? Where do you come from? What's your normal world?
For sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I am a software engineer by day. Not a network engineer. I don't know a ton about networking. Enough to get by, with my day job of software engineering. Yeah, I was in the enclosures and off-grid channel for a long time. I was a lurker, long time lurker. Um, First time caller.
Yep.
But watched I think it was 𝗵𝗁𝗏
Oh yeah.
in that
Yep.
channel. Um
RBTIO, like
who
whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I watched a couple of his updates about the rut. And sort of I was trying to piece together some of the information, and I finally decided, hey, I'll just reach out to this guy and see if he'd be willing to hop on a call with me.
Hmm.
And for my day job, we pair program quite a lot, which is basically just like two people, one computer, except now it's all remote, so it's
Huh.
two people, two computers, but screen sharing.
Okay. Cool.
And so we did that for a couple of hours, and he kind of just walked me through it. And my article was me trying to just like ingest his information and like translate it to a little bit more human readable format for other people.
Totally.
Um, yeah, sorry if I dived in too quickly to that, but
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. And is kind of translating that from like geek speak to normal talk? Is that part of your regular job, or did you just kind of stumble upon it here?
it can be. It can be. Sometimes if I'm talking to a product manager, trying to translate the, product requirements into technical requirements, and then, all the technical hiccups back to the product requirements. So it is part of my job to some extent.
Okay. I mean,
Um,
everyone who speaks that language has to figure out how to translate it so the rest of us can understand a
right,
little bit about how the world works.
right, right.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you go through the thing with RBTIO, whatever his name is. It's so
Mhm.
funny. Like I know all these people, like, oh, there's Kentucky B, and you're like, who is this
Right.
dude? That's why it's Ben, but
Yeah. Yeah.
all these people you don't know. And then
I don't even know his real name, I think. Pretty
you
sure.
had like you had a RUT 240, so you must have had one because you're working through it. And
I
eventually
did.
that thing gave you so many problems that you found something else. Was that generally how it worked?
Yeah, I did struggle with it. I'm trying to remember exactly the issue. I think I walked through it a little bit in the article.
Yeah. Yep.
The process of just getting it compatible with WireGuard was kind of a struggle because
That's right. Because you guys were all using WireGuard to get the static IP, right?
right, yeah,
That's right.
WireGuard was the tool of choice. But it seems that happened to be the case because RBTO uh, had more experience with WireGuard and not really with OpenVPN.
Okay.
And I had zero experience with either of them.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, if he knows WireGuard, I'm gonna just shoot for that and see what
Yep.
we can make happen. So we tried to shoot for that. It took about an hour just to figure out how to get the plugin installed on the RUT240. It turns out if you have an old version of the firmware for the RUT240, it won't WireGuard won't show up in the library like plugins
Hmm.
section of the admin interface. So you have to update the firmware, then you got to search for the WireGuard library, install that, and even with that, I think they put a lot of effort into OpenVPN. Clearly,
Hmm.
that's like the first thing that pops open in the configuration page for
Yep.
VPNs. But the WireGuard stuff kind of felt like an afterthought, a little bit, just because it was this third-party plugin stuff. Um, so we did try it, and we got it. What the weird part is, we got it working the first day that I paired with him.
Yep.
Um, and then we tried again like a few weeks later. I was between then and the few weeks later when I got him on the call again. I was just struggling to figure out what changed between that time and then.
Because you were getting
Um,
relayed, right? That was kind of the issue you're trying to solve.
yeah, I was getting relayed, and I don't believe I was even able to get back to the port opening for. gosh, what is the port? Sorry.
44158.
Yeah,
It's
four
like
four
that's my
one five
secret
eight.
pin for everything now. So it's like, hey, you want my bank
Nice.
account
Nice.
44158? Everyone knows that.
Goes to Nick Hawk's bank account
Yeah.
after this.
Get
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I don't know why that number was definitely ingrained into my head
Yeah.
for months. Um, so anyway, yeah, I had heard from people on the Helium Discord are just amazing. Shout out to them because somebody just reached out to me after I posted a couple of times about the WireGuard stuff. This might even have been, I think this was after I wrote the first article about
Yep.
the rut.
Okay.
Um, I believe his name was Mo. I don't know what the postfix number is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
he reached out and was like, "Hey, have you tried these iNet devices, the Mango, and then the GL iNet
Mhm.
750X?" And I was like, "No, I haven't. But what are you doing with it? How's it going?" And he said, "Yeah, I spent days and days trying to get the RUT 240 working, and then I just happened upon this other cell router."
Mhm.
And got it working within a day or two, and it was easy. It was a lot easier to sort of navigate the VPN interface
Yep.
in the admin tools. Um, so I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll give that a shot and see if I can reproduce it." And like you said, it was super easy. So I just ended up switching to that and trying that out.
Rad.
Um, yeah, yeah, worked out.
Yeah, it's interesting to see kind of the progression. Is that I know when I got into it, there was one other dude who had done a couple off grids, and he'd actually done the very first off grids Helium had ever done as a company. He'd set up. I think they were doing like
Wow.
a mountain biking tracking thing up in the Bay Area, and
Oh,
he
that's cool.
he'd been the guy
Huh.
who set him up, Paul at Tourmaline Wireless. So if you go to Google and you look up tourmalinewireless.com, you can see the very first off grid Helium project
Huh.
ever. Um,
Oh, that's awesome.
and he lived not right up the road, but lived about 30 minutes north of me. And so when I saw that website, when I was looking to do my first off grid, I went up and talked to him, and he's like a cell um, Verizon guy. And
Yeah.
so from his perspective, it was like, we're going to do everything the right way. We're not going to worry about the cost of the equipment. We're just going to put in like the nicest of everything. And so my first
Right.
off grids were like these $700 routers, and I didn't know anything. I was just like, dude, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it.
Right.
So I was
Right.
buying these cradle points that there's like no problem with them, nothing, but they were
Uh,
4 or 5 times the price of everything else. And when the RUT 240s came along, I kind of felt stupid that I pushed out these cradle points, but I was like, I just don't
right.
know. And I think that's
Right.
the big piece in Helium is that there's so many of us that have different expertises, and then the ability to come in and either apply like your troubleshooting expertise, or you have an actual kind of professional
Right.
expertise in it.
Right. Yeah. So RBTO is definitely, I believe he's a telecom. He works in telecom,
Yeah.
so he has experience with that, and he's specifically in networking and telecom. So I think just trying to parse his language and try to like understand it
Yeah.
enough to like communicate something valuable to the other side was tough. It's a huge industry, and there's a lot of stuff to grok for sure.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff. I think that's the other neat thing about Helium is that if you decide to get into it, and I'd actually like to hear the story of your off grids,
Yeah.
if you don't mind,
Yeah.
is
For sure.
as you get into it, you realize I realized there was so much of the world that I didn't know existed. I didn't know how it worked, and it was like pulling back this curtain that it was, for someone who's in it, they're like, "Of course, you idiot! Like the phone is not like a block of metal that just works.
Right.
Like there's a
Right.
million things going on in there." But
Yeah.
Helium was my exposure to that. It was a super cool thing to find out,
Yeah.
like, oh, there's this thing called NAT. Like, what does NAT stand for? And then what's CGNAT? And
Right.
what is it? I mean, like, even what is a public IP address? I didn't know any of that stuff when I started. So pretty cool that Helium forces you to learn.
Yeah, I agree, and it was actually good timing because for my day job, I'm currently at an incubator company, but I'm working as a part of a company inside of that incubator that's doing real time video chat.
Okay.
Um, and a large part of that is actually understanding NATs and how peer to peer connections work. Just because that's a big part of the signaling in web. It's called WebRTC, I guess.
Okay.
And so it was happening, like I was trying to understand Helium and like the networking stuff behind Helium while trying to understand that, and it was chaos for a while, but then the two worlds merged and it was kind of nice. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, Nat, okay, I get it. Like that totally gnat piercing. Like, okay, cool. What is this CG gnat thing?
Yep.
You know, is just sort of a natural evolution. I still don't understand most of it, honestly.
No, no,
But
there's a lot going on out there.
yeah,
You know, we
yeah,
like to think it's just like a bunch of, like physical threads that go from one place to another that go through some like routing thing, but
right.
there's this thing that we try and make like this skeuomorphic idea of like, oh, it's a physical piece that goes into the digital world, but as soon as it goes digital, there's none of the same restrictions apply, and it can be really complicated really quickly.
Yep, yep.
So,
It was,
how did you get into the off grid thing? Was that your very first hotspot? Was an off grid?
this is where I reveal that I'm a phony. I actually don't have a legit off-grid setup.
Okay, it's so
Which
awesome.
I know. I was just like, but I know this piece of information that's
Yeah.
like really helpful,
Yep.
and so I was like, let me just get this out. What I do use it for, or what I have used it for, is I've actually sort of set up doing like 50-50 splits with people in. So I live in New York,
Hmm.
and the areas that are best for mining, or the areas that were best for mining, are definitely no longer good.
Hmm.
Are in Jersey. So I did a couple of setups out there in people's homes, but I didn't really want to have to configure their routers and get into their get their passwords and all this stuff. So basically, just having a Mango, the little
Hmm.
like router, I don't know, the iNet devices
Hmm.
that sits in front of their router, but or like between my hotspot.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
and their network helped me just kind of avoid the whole uh give me like I need to do port forwarding
And
and like
what
change
does the
it.
Mango do? I've heard it a bunch. I just have never used that thing.
Yeah, it's basically just a little tiny router that you can upload your WireGuard interface like configuration files to, and so it will basically serve as the VPN between your hotspot and their network.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
So it's a lot like I don't know if you're familiar with a deeper Pico, I think it is.
I think I heard about that a couple of times, but I've been a little bit bad about following the industry lately.
Yeah, yeah. No,
uh,
there's a ton of shit going on, and it's like
what was it, Pico?
a deeper Pico, PICO. They had some deal over Christmas where you bought 10 of them and they gave you enough cryptocurrency that it was like getting
Huh.
them for free, which is just like total bullshit marketing. So I bought 10 of them. I don't know what to do with these things. I gave a couple away. I got the other 8 or 9
Huh.
sitting in my box, sitting in my room here. But it sounds like the
Right.
same thing, is that it plugs in between I think they might plug in between the router and the modem, and they do
Okay.
some magical cloaking shit. But
Right. Right. That's cool. Actually, that's an interesting idea. So yeah, I think that's pretty similar,
okay.
except it's way more manual because you got to figure out all the WireGuard stuff and spin up your VPN server. But
Yeah.
um, that's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, so I do have some deployments in Jersey, which are now making me like I think half a cent per day.
Okay.
So you know, I haven't. Winter's rough. Winter's rough.
Uh,
Going up on roofs
Oh, that's
during
right. It's
winter.
winter with you. Like I look outside and it's sunny and 70. I'm like, man, I'm sweating a little
Oh,
bit.
I'm jealous,
But
honestly. Getting out there was even a pain during the summer, but
yep.
especially during the winter, being up on those slanted roofs, I just didn't want to have to deal with that. So I got to resolve that at some point in the
Yeah.
future. But
Or do you think that since you have that ability on those hotspots, they're not connected more or less, well, they're not connected to the home network. You can really easily get those off grid just with a solar panel and batteries. Is that kind of within the plans, or is it, here we are on April 1st. Are the rewards so low for you that you're like, dude, it's just not worth it? I'm not into it anymore.
I'm a little torn.
Hmm.
New York is pretty rough. I don't know if it's like pretty saturated.
Yeah, yeah. You guys destroyed New York City.
We really did. We went all for it, and it was yeah, we went too far. But I do have so another person that I followed pretty closely in the Enclosures and Off Grid channel is Prof
Prof
TK.
2K, yeah.
I met him in real life too, and he's a great guy. He's super nice.
Yep.
And I bought his one of his outdoor enclosures,
Okay.
and I'm ashamed to say it's still here in my basement. I can show you it. It's right over there. I haven't. I didn't make it past the winter season.
Yep.
Or I didn't make the cut basically
Yeah, yeah.
um, to get it up and deployed somewhere. Because there's a whole process of like getting approval for the property that you put it up on, and it's a whole thing. And I think people do varying levels of like legal versions of that, which
Oh yeah,
is I
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
which is its own sort of nuanced, like, you gotta sort of process that stuff.
Yeah.
But I have a 30 watt, and the other thing I realized before, or I wish I realized before I bought it, was New York really needs more of a 60 watt at least, and maybe more than that even. Like 30 watts pretty measly for our kind of
Yeah.
sun.
Yep.
So I think before I do anything, I've got to get an upgraded panel and potentially battery.
Okay. Are you going to
Uh,
write an off-grid build how to once you get there? You've already got the
I'm
router.
thinking about good ones. I feel like you've got it covered. I don't need to. I don't
Okay.
need to cover that stuff.
Yeah.
But your articles were a big inspiration. Just the for what when I wrote that piece, I liked your tone
Mm,
of your articles,
sure.
like sort of the informal tone. It was great, and I wanted to say that it was a big inspiration for writing that article
Oh,
because
cool.
it was very it's for helium is pretty complex technically,
Yeah.
and reading it in a tone that makes you feel like it's sort of more of a formal conversation, and it helps a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah, no,
um,
it's a really interesting thing because it's made up of these pretty simple concepts, but in practice they can be really
yeah,
complicated. And as soon as you peer under the surface even a little bit, I mean, just
start looking at hits.
yeah,
Yeah,
it gets
it
crazy
gets wild.
fast.
But
Super cool. Now, is there anything else that you're doing in the either the kind of crypto or the IoT space that you think you're going to apply what you learned on this router side to that? Are you going to do any like off-grid weather stations or off-grid IoT stuff? Are you going to push into the sensor side, or are you just sticking with the incubator, kind of the regular job?
For now, this has been pretty much a side gig, side hustle,
Yeah.
for me. So I haven't extended too far beyond the knowledge that I've sort of gathered from RBTO.
Yep.
Um, I have like a side project that I worked on briefly when I actually forget what the name of the website was that sort of mapped out hotspots in your area. It was like super simple. You just like hit a button and
Huh.
it got shut down. It's not Hotspotty. Um, you featured it in one of your articles
Might be
a
Helium
while ago.
Vision. Oh, there's one that was really good where the guy shut it down because he's like, dude, it's too much work.
Yeah,
Oh man, I used to use that all the time to explain
yeah,
hexes. Not
same,
Helium
same.
Place, maybe?
Helium Place, that's
Yeah.
what it was. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was so sad when it shut down. So as
Yep.
a side project, I kind of built. It doesn't have the hexes. It doesn't have like a lot
Yep.
of what they had, but I built a little thing. I called it Spot the Hot.
Okay.
Uh,
Is it still online? Should we put it in the links here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
It's probably not going to handle load if anyone goes there, but
All right.
yeah, I'll shoot it over to you.
Cool.
You can
Spot
pull
the
up in
hot.
Discord. Spotthehot.herokuapp.com, and it's hyphens between them.
All right, I'll write
But
it
yeah,
down.
basically tried to recreate some of the functionality, like searching an address and just searching hotspots over an area and seeing what they're making. I kind of wanted it to be like show me the top hotspot performing hotspots in my area.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there already are apps that do that much better than I could. There's I forget what it
Yeah,
is. I have them all.
Hotspotty's got a thing where they color code it. Um,
Yeah,
but there's
I do that too. I have a color coding sort of, but that's
okay.
based on their I forget what they call the metric. What is it?
Is it transmit reward scale or is it something else?
Yeah,
Because
transmit reward
the
scale, I
scale
think.
is not as useful compared to the earnings. But
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I wanted to show like by like ordered list of earnings.
mhm.
But unfortunately that because of the way the Helium API is built, it's difficult to do that without making n+1 queries, which would just be like for every hotspot, make one
Ah,
individual query per thing. And that's I think why the Helium team has gotten pounded so hard with
yep,
the on their API
yep.
is there's a bunch of people like me I've realized, and I maybe I should have not shared that link, but whatever. I think it's fine.
They're gonna be
Uh,
like, dude, give me that guy's email. I'm hunting him down.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, they're gonna block me real quick.
Yeah,
But yeah. So I do wish that was one thing available in the API is to be able to sort of query over a location
yeah,
by some earning amount.
yep.
But I think that I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting problem. Um,
No, it's something I've been
So,
pushing for Helium-Vision for a long time. Is
oh yeah,
that ability to like, hey, how do you how can I draw a line around whatever region I want? I don't want to be constricted by circles or squares or radiuses. I want to draw a line just like I have a
mm,
crayon and then tell me how many hotspots are within that area, show me the highest earning hotspots. And that's all
right,
I care about. And I think
right,
as easy as that sounds, it has confounded, some of the brightest people so far. Maybe it's just too
yeah,
much effort or something, but that would be kind of the single most useful tool out there for me.
right. I think it's right now it's doable, but it's really hard.
I'm sure people
Because
in the YouTube comments will tell us exactly how we're messing things up. So it's always
right.
nice.
Yeah, yeah, they'll let us know.
Yeah.
Which hopefully I don't spam them with requests, because my so the thing I built is just making straight requests to the API from the front ends. There's no like server in between.
Okay.
Um, so everything you request there will go right to their APIs.
Oh,
Don't spam it.
I'm sure they'll love that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they'll love that. Sure.
Cool.
Anyway.
Ripping, dude. Well, that's super neat to just to see. I think one of the other cool things I've seen in the Helium is just normal people coming in and figuring something out and then sharing it in general for free.
Yeah,
um, that's just
yeah,
been a super cool thing to see. And I'm really excited and stoked and grateful that you're a part of that, where you just saw like, hey, there's this problem. It hasn't been solved. I'm going to go fix it. And that to me is like at the core kind of most exciting and interesting thing about participating in the Helium network is you have an amazing amount of expertise freely available, just like you said on the Discord.
yeah, totally. I think that's what drew me the most to Helium as this network. First of all, I just believe in I don't know, I believe in a lot of the cryptos out there, but
Sure.
Helium is one that really stood out to me as like, okay, this actually has concrete value. Like what Helium is trying to do makes so much sense
Hmm.
as a cryptocurrency.
Yep.
Um, and so I think that also brings a lot of pragmatic people to the network in a way.
Oh yeah. Interesting. I hadn't thought of how that draws people. That's pretty cool.
I mean, that's what drew me, so I'm
Yeah.
making a definitely a biased assumption.
Yep.
Um, but and telecom in general is like a hugely complex, and I feel like to solve this problem, you need a lot of smart people. So, like people like 𝗵𝗫 that I'm so grateful for having showed me that stuff. Just to be able to pick their brains is great.
Yeah. Well, it's
But yeah,
it's
I
it's a
agree with you.
privilege, right?
Yeah, totally.
We get to hang out with those people.
Yeah,
Cool. Oliver, anything else? So if you haven't checked stuff out, just look up Oliver Switzer on Medium. You got two great articles on how to do either how to not get the rut right or how to get the ILG 750, whatever that thing is,
yeah,
INetGL,
long,
et
long
cetera, et
name.
cetera, in there. And
Yeah.
that's, yeah, it's a great way to do the off grid stuff. In fact, I just went out with a guy to work on one of my off grids, and he was so frustrated with my rut that he just tore it out and put in his router, which was one of
Really?
these INET things. So pretty cool.
Huh. But you did manage to get the Brett to work, right? Or were you in your
Mm-hmm.
setup using a VPN, or was it a public
No,
IP?
no, and I got lucky and I didn't understand it early on, and then once I did understand it, I tried to make it as clear as possible to people, but I think people skipped over it. Was that when I got in, the DIY program was open, and so all of my
Mm,
hotspots except one. I had a couple more that I bought, but I just gave those away. Um, all of mine were DIY, so I split all of them so that the miner
mhm.
either lived in the cloud or on a Raspberry Pi, and then the only thing out in the field
Oh,
was a packet forwarder, and the packet forwarder is a
huh,
light hotspot. So that's like the experience
great.
that everyone's going to have with light hotspots in hopefully
Yep.
less than a month is the experience I've been having for the past year and a half, where
Okay.
you don't
Got it.
care about static IPs, you don't care about any of that stuff because all the
Great.
light hotspot, all the packet forwarder has to do is just talk to the miner.
So you didn't really need any of the port forwarding shenanigans for that, right?
Right.
Or
And that's also why I didn't have that on the site. Like I didn't have that problem and I didn't know how to fix
yeah.
that problem and I didn't have an incentive to fix that problem.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so I
no,
reached out
that's
to other
great.
people and said like, "Hey, can you write something for me?" And the folks over at MP Antenna did because we had built a bunch of off grids for a guy in New York who is putting them on a
Huh.
farm, and I didn't have a way to solve that problem. And so they had solved the problem for yet another customer who had done hundreds of off grids in an orchard in Oregon.
Oh wow.
And so that's where that kind of very first RUT 240 thing that is on the 𝗪𝗁𝘁 site came from. But I didn't
Right.
have to do any of that stuff. I just got super lucky. So
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we are. I didn't realize it was a month, almost a month away now, of the moving over to light hotspots.
Yeah.
But keep your fingers crossed. I guess we'll see.
It's end of Q2. I think. I mean, I don't know. The Helium team
Yeah.
is so smart that I think they can figure it out in time. But it's also so
Cool.
complex, and I've seen the launches so far be pretty close, but not bang on.
Right. Right.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Totally.
just wouldn't hold out hope for like a perfect on time piece. But man, to talk to this, like every time I talk to anyone at Helium, I'm like, I am a lot dumber than I thought I was.
Totally. Yeah.
So
I am amazed that the constraints that they work within technically of like considering adding any field to the blockchain, like any field has to like you have to consider the exact number of bytes that you're trying to add or remove, and like it's mind-boggling.
yeah,
As a software engineer, I'm just like, oh, I'll just add a bunch of like fields on a thing and it's fine. But like, man, they
not so much for them.
yep, not for them. Not
Cool.
for them.
Right on, dog. Well, I'll put links to your articles in the description. We'll see if we can crash this Spot the Hot Heroku app, and we'll see how it goes.
Great.
Thanks,
All
man.
right. Yeah, for sure. Take care, Nick.
Bye bye.
See ya.